So, this is going to be wrapping up my final, best of the year list for 2024. I know people are kind of over these videos already because we are now a week into 2025. But I got one more, because I forgot to talk about my favorite games of 2024. And one of the main reasons it took me a while to make this video, because I didn't really play many games this year. So I don't have that much to talk about, at least when it comes to new games. I know for many people this was a weaker year for video games. You look at, the large scale of things that were released, it kind of was a slower year. And a lot of the newer games that I've played so far, I really didn't enjoy that much. Like Dragon's Dogma 2, a game that I had very, very high hopes for. Did not have a great time with it. Black Ops 6, another great game I was excited for. I don't know, it was just kind of another boring Call of Duty game from the most recent Call of Duty era. But there were a few standouts that I do want to talk about. There are a few other big games that I haven't gotten to play yet. Stuff like Astrobot, which won Game of the Year. Stuff like Black Myth Wukong. Those two games are games that I have, that I want to play, but because of life, I haven't yet, but I will soon, hopefully. I also replayed some games this year. Some of those games I want to make bigger videos on. I replayed them for a reason, for the channel, but yeah, I will talk a little bit about those here. The first thing I do want to talk about is my least favorite game of the year, which is an interesting thing to talk about in a video titled My Favorite Games of the Year, but it's one that I feel like I'd be remiss to not talk about. It was one of my most anticipated things of the year, even though I was a little worried about it. A lot of people were worried about this title before it had come out. A lot of people were weary of whether this thing was going to be any good or not, but it was coming from a studio that makes my favorite game series of all time, of course, the Batman Arkham games. I'm talking about Rocksteady, and I am talking about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. This game was 10 years in the making, at least almost 10 years in the making, and we had speculated for years what Rocksteady would be working on. Would it be a new Superman game, a Justice League game, a Flash game, a new Arkham game? What would it be? And when it was revealed to be Suicide Squad, a Suicide Squad open world game, there was a sense of disappointment. It felt a lot smaller scaled than what a lot of us would have wanted, but then you got that tagline, Kill the Justice League. A single-player Suicide Squad game in an open-world metropolis where you're hunting down the Justice League. That could be cool. What's not cool is another open-world looter-shooter, live-servicey bullshit Warframe clone. And that's what this game ended up being. Rocksteady is a studio that has only ever made single-player epic adventure games, the Arkham games being these massively amazing story-based video games, and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League does have seeds of that style of game. It has seeds of what Rocksteady does great. There are decent moments in this game, especially early on. This whole sequence that you have with Batman and some of these boss battles you have with some of the Justice League members. There are glimpses of great stuff. The open world at times can look really cool and be fun to traverse. The characters can be enjoyable to listen to, sort of communicate, but something you realize very quickly while playing this game is just how dry it all feels. The gameplay is very basic. It's just your basic third-person looter shooter, right? You can jump up and down, you got some special abilities, but at the end of the day, you're aiming and you're shooting and you're throwing shit, and that's pretty much it. And although it could be fun at first, the lack of variety in missions and enemy types gets very, very old really, really fast, and it becomes very evident how just boring and how tedious this game is to play. After about 2 hours of fun, everything else after that 2 hours of fun gameplay is absolutely dreadful to play. This game was a chore to get through. And it's matched with a story that feels half-assed. There are moments in the story that feel grand and epic and like they had been working on this for 10 years. And then there's other aspects of the story that feel like they were made yesterday. And it just makes the whole game so disappointing. And this was easily one of my biggest disappointments of the year because I'd waited so long for Rocksteady's next game. And here's hoping that whatever they do next is an improvement over this and gets back to what they are good at making, which are these large-scale, story-based action games. We need another Arkham game. That would be awesome. All right, we've talked about my least favorite game of the year. What is my favorite, my number one? Well, wait 1 second. Let's talk about some games that were just missing out in that top spot. First one, Helldivers 2. Yeah, this was a big surprise. Another third-person looter shooter live service game, but one that's actually fun and good. Helldivers 2 is a game that I never thought I would enjoy playing. It's the type of game that I kind of dread and hate. Of course, listening to me talk so much crap about Suicide Squad, you could probably guess that I'm just not a big live service, third-person, lootery-shootery fan. But I had a lot of fun with Helldivers 2, even though I didn't get to play it as much as I would have liked to, and I know there's a lot of controversies that I'm just not really locked in on. I don't know what all the noise about this game, I know people got angry for different reasons, but my experience playing this game, this large-scale game that makes you feel like you're in this massive massive global war, and all of your actions are actually being put towards winning this war, gaining back territory, fighting these aliens and these robots, right? It makes you feel invested in this universe, and it has combat that is fun. You don't feel like this super soldier. You don't feel like this massive hero. You feel like a vulnerable dude that's been given a gun and has been dropped into this world, and every action you make, you might die, but you know what? You feel like a badass when things actually go right. When you're surrounded by swarms of enemies and you're on your last stand and you're mowing them down with a machine gun and calling in a missile strike, and it's just a game that makes you feel like a soldier, and it's done extremely well, and the gameplay's fun, playing with friends is fun, completing missions is satisfying. Yes, the live servicey stuff is there, but it's never distracting to what the gameplay actually does right, which is just investing you in the world and the alien action, saving democracy, or whatever the tagline is. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one, I'm not gonna lie. I also just finished playing through Warhammer Space Marines 2. I don't know anything about Warhammer. It seems like a really cool universe. I would love to get invested in it. It's just one of those things where I don't really know where to start, especially I'm a big novel guy, so like where do I start reading? There's really like no guide out there. Oh, but this game looked like a lot of fun. It's coming from the guys that made the World War Z game. They have this mechanic in that game where you like defend these outposts and stuff, and the zombies can come and jump on top of each other and create mounds and sort of overwhelm you, and they really love that mechanic because it's in this game like 100 times. This is just a good old-fashioned video game. You play as these chunky giant Marines. When I first saw previews for this, I figured it would just kind of be a Gears of War clone. This thing is actually very far from Gears of War, where Gears of War is a cover third-person shooter. This is very much a, like, hack-and-slash game that has some third-person shooting in it, and it's super satisfying. Yeah, this game looks good, it feels good, you get to smash some aliens, you get to shoot some things, you get to blow things up, and you get to feel like a badass in a world that is very interesting. At times, this thing could feel a little clunky, it could feel a little outdated, but overall, I had a lot of fun playing through this one. It's nice, short, sweet, and just entertaining. Some other games I played this year that don't qualify as my favorite game of the year just because they didn't come out this year, but some games I did replay. The Last of Us Part 1. Arguably the greatest video game ever. I have like a 20-minute video waiting to be made about this whole thing. I recorded it like a month ago and just haven't edited it. So that'll come eventually. But yeah, it's a perfect game. I mean, what more can I say about The Last of Us Part 1 that I haven't already said? It's amazing. In the spirit of that, I've also been replaying through Uncharted 4. I'm just about at the end of it. I hadn't played through this game since it first came out, and I wanted to see if it's as good as I remembered it. And I do have some problems with the game that I don't remember having, just some core stuff with its gameplay loop and this stuff going on. But overall, it's still a really solid Naughty Dog game. It's beautiful still for its time because it's almost 10 years old at this point. The story is great. It's just an amazing game. Been playing a lot of MLB The Show. Great game. A lot of NCAA college football. My God, that game is amazing. I absolutely love that thing. Waited so long to get that, but of course you don't want to listen to me talk about sports games. My favorite game of the year, though, easily, and the first game I played through this entire year, was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Yeah, I mean, listen, I never played through the original Final Fantasy VII, so I'm not the type of guy that's like this big Final Fantasy nerd that's gonna come at you and be like, this game, it tapped into that nostalgia of my childhood, I loved it so much! No, I'm somewhat of a new Final Fantasy fan, like a new age Final Fantasy fan. Last year, I had played through Final Fantasy 16 when it had come out. It was my first ever Final Fantasy game, and I loved it. So then I picked up the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I found myself over the moon loving that game. I just thought the whole experience, these characters, these worlds, this big mystery of this story, it just really sort of took me in, and I absolutely loved every second of it, which made Rebirth, which is the sequel and part 2 of this Final Fantasy VII Remake, my most anticipated game of the year, and I'm happy to say it did not disappoint. It's easily the game I played the most this year. I poured almost 70 hours into this thing and just playing through the main story, and it's a game that has its issues. I made a whole review on it where I broke down my main issues with this game, how I thought it was a lesser game than the original remake, the one that came out a few years ago. But at the same time, this is a game that completely just it mesmerized me. This ginormous Final Fantasy open world game that gets you even more invested in these characters than the previous game. It opens up the combat system in a way that feels more free-flowing, more larger than life, and it gives you more options with playing with different characters and a bunch of other things. The story is epic, the music is grand, the characters are emotional, you get invested into every single world that you get introduced to, all these different lands, these countries, all these different missions you go on. Everything here just feels so lovable and amazing and deep and epic and cinematic. This game is just huge. I loved almost all of it. There are some tedious things, some tedious, chapters, some tedious moments, but altogether, I felt so fulfilled playing this game, and even though the ending is so convoluted, I found myself tearing up. I found myself shedding a tear. I found myself cheering at the big moments. Like, it's just a game that had all of those emotions I was sort of looking for. And yes, although it is not perfect, and I do think the original remake is a better game. It's just a more complete game, in my opinion, whereas this one has, you know, you playing as that teddy bear thing throwing boxes. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but I fucking hated him. This thing is still a very, very amazing experience that I wish I can go back and replay for the first time again. And I'm excited to see what they do with Part 3, because my god, the ending of this one, chef's kiss. It's amazing. That's it. Those are my favorite games of the year. What are your favorites? I'm sure you have a better catalog than I do, because I didn't play that much. Let me know down below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more Twitter notifications for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.